Well, first of all, I would put the question back to you. Why would anyone in their right mind drink fish oil?
That's a good question.
And well, I mean, why? Why would you bother to do it? Because it doesn't taste that great. I mean, we've tinkered around with it until it tastes okay, but it's still not delicious. And why would anyone take it? Because all the evidence suggests that when you drink fish oil, it does you no good at all. It doesn't really reduce risk of cardiovascular disease or neurological disease or cancer or anything. Not me speaking, that's the Cochrane collaboration. And not only that, but when you drink fish oil, it looks as if, because these products, frankly, are so badly formulated, these very delicate omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids break down in the body and they form compounds like malondialdehyde and nonanols and hexanols and compounds like that. And if they don't sound good, well, that's pretty appropriate because they certainly don't do you any good. They increase the risk of atrial fibrillation. We've got data, pretty good data that shows that. And more recently, some very new data, fresh out of China, good data, suggests that drinking fish oil increases your risk of lung cancer as well. And that's because these products are so badly formulated. Now, when you eat fish, that doesn't have any negative effects on your health at all. In fact, it's all good, all of it. So there's a big gap here somehow. And for anyone who is interested in this kind of thing, this difference between oily fish, good, fish oil, bad, that is enough to trigger acute cognitive dissonance. You begin to think, well, how are both of these things possible? And they're both possible because they're not the same thing. Oily fish is not fish oil. Commercial fish oil is a poor excuse for oily fish because when the scientists first started looking at this, a couple of Danish physiologists called Bang and Durberg, they were looking at the Inuit in Greenland who were eating a lot of oily fish. Actually, not so much oily fish. They only run for a couple of weeks every year. They were eating mostly marine mammals, which I know is not cool. They were eating seals and walruses and stuff like that. They had lots of omega-3s in their blood and very little degenerative disease. So these two Danes thought, well, it must be the omega-3s. And they were half right, but totally wrong. Because what it is in these marine foods that protect you is the omega-3s and the polyphenols. It's a binary weapon. You strip them out, polyphenols out, you're left with just the omega-3s. They don't do you any good at all. And as I said, they're likely to harm you. So the fish oil industry got it all wrong because they were still thinking like a pharmaceutical company. They thought, oh, it's got to be one molecule, got to be specific. And they developed this huge billion-dollar fish oil market, which is a complete confidence trick. They don't help anybody, they're killing people. They should be put out of business with extreme prejudice. We took a different tack. We kind of went back to basics, and because we have origins in Scandinavia, we were aware of the work of some very, very good scientists at the Arctic University, and they had been looking at weird combinations of fish oil and olive oil, actually seal oil and olive oil. And they were generating results in their preclinical models that nobody had seen before. We thought, well, why? What have they done here? Um, I actually spoke to some of them, and they said, well, we had this idea where we were combining the Inuit diet and the Mediterranean diet. And they kind of stumbled onto it. It was a serendipitous discovery. But I got to give them credit for it. They realized that they had something new, that two and two were came out as much more than four, coming out as 22. And it turned out that when you combined not the oleic acid and olive oil, but the polyphenols, they're a bit like the polyphenols that you find in the marine food webs, you reconstitute all of the biological benefits of the whole fish. So now you have an anti-inflammatory combination that is extremely powerful. In fact, it's about as powerful, this is for the medics, as the glucocorticoids. And that's about as powerful suppression of chronic inflammation as you can get, but without the adverse effects associated with these steroid molecules. Anyway, this was still happening a little bit out there in academia, the industry, and the world in general hadn't picked up on this until some Italian scientists at the University of Rome, Professor Bruno Berre, and some of his colleagues. developed a dried blood spot test, which meant that you didn't have to go into the lab or the clinic and have your blood drawn. If you wanted to test for your lipid profile, you could just stick a little microscopic little needle into your finger at home, drop a couple of drops of blood onto a piece of filter paper, dry it, seal it up, send it off to a third party, independent forensic analytical laboratory. We use VTest. And a couple of weeks later, you could go online and get your results. So now, for the first time, we had an effector and a sensor or a test. So you have a complete feedback loop. Do the test at home, see if there's a problem. If there isn't, congratulations. You're living a righteous lifestyle. You're eating lots of oily fish, you have the right lipid profile, and guess what? You're not at risk of chronic inflammatory stress. Go home, don't bother us anymore. And by the way, here's your money back. We'll pay you for the money that you spent on the test. Not many people are like that. A few, right up in the top of Northwest Europe, where they eat a lot of cold water oily fish. I mean, back in the days of the Hanseatic League, and you have to know a little bit about history here, herrings were so widely consumed that they were actually the unit of currency in that particular time. Stuart knows all about this, Stuart, because he's dug into the history. Not many people know that. So these folk are eating a lot of oily fish, and they have pretty good profiles. And guess what? They don't get much chronic inflammation or very little chronic degenerative disease. But they're a very small minority. In most of the rest of the world, thanks to the way in which our diet has degraded, it's been industrialized. Most people now have very high ratios of 6 to 3 in their blood, very low levels of 3. So you have a low 3 index, which means you are very prone to chronic inflammatory stress. And that's chronic inflammatory stress. It's a complex process, leads eventually to the slow destruction of the extracellular matrix, which leads to the disorganization and then destruction and loss of healthy tissue. And this is a process which is at the core of most degenerative diseases. If you have chronic inflammatory stress, you're going to become ill eventually. You will start losing cartilage. You'll move towards osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. You'll lose bone mineral density. You'll move towards osteoporosis. You'll chew holes in the linings of your arteries. You'll develop hypertension, coronary artery disease, dementia, all of the diseases of modern life.
So fish,
So,
so fish has been that important to everybody that we've all needed this much fish, and none of
no,
the fish oils.
absolutely not. Absolutely not, because if you're eating a traditional diet, there are enough parent omega-3s and omega-6s in basic plant foods and the basic produce and the fish, the foods you could fish or farm or hunt. In that kind of traditional diet, you'll have the right ratios of parent omega-6s and 3s so you can make enough of your own omega-6 and omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids and maintain good cellular membrane chemistry and good inflammatory status that way. You can still mount an acute inflammatory response, which you need to do in response to pathogens or physical trauma, but you won't develop chronic inflammation. And so you will not develop a chronic degenerative disease unless you have a very, very strong genetic risk factor. So to come back to balance oil, what we do is we reconstitute oily fish. We put the polyphenols back into the fish oil. And now you have a combination. You've got the omega-3s and the polyphenols. The polyphenols do two things. They put the omega-3s into the cell membranes where they are required, and they complement the omega-3s anti-inflammatory effects. So for the first time, what we have is a combination which drags nutrition and supplements into life science and medicine because we have the test, we have numbers, we can show you and your doctor you have a good lipid profile and you're probably not very much at risk. Alternatively, you do the test and you see, like most people, you have bad numbers. And we can say to the doctor, we can say to you, if you're a doctor, you have a problem here, which will over time become manifest as a clinical condition. And if you take balance oil, you can watch those numbers change. And as they change, your symptoms of inflammation will decrease and your underlying morbidity, the underlying health problem will start to heal.
So Dr. Paul,
So,
when we're talking about our
mhm.
test, why is it so many doctors are are not recommending this as one of the key things that they're doing. Why are doctors?
Because it's not taught at medical schools, and the curricula at medical schools are hugely influenced by the companies which pour money into funding those schools, and many of them involve sums of pharmaceutical money. Do you really think the pharmaceutical industry is interested in destroying itself? Because that's what will happen. If we can reduce the frequency of chronic degenerative disease by 90%, and that's what the data shows, the pharmaceutical industry in its current form is dead. And a good thing, too, in my view.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I hope you can hear the
However,
behind it. Okay.
I don't mean to sound unduly critical of doctors. There's plenty of good doctors who have the interest of their patients at heart, who genuinely want to help them, who are more than aware of the limitations, shortcomings, and problems associated with a pharmacocentric approach to medicine. Once they have looked at our data, once they've understood our science, they welcome us with open arms. And we are now working, as you know, Carla, with very senior medical personnel in over 100 countries.
Absolutely.
Nutrition is coming of age. We're not out in the cold, we're not in the fringes anymore. We're beginning to occupy center stage.
I love it. I love it. The rest of us are loving it over here too. Okay, so we know that the balance oil is not a fish oil. It is unique for that, and we can prove that with our test. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. I
absolutely.
mean, we
Now,
see routinely people who take fish oil, ordinary fish oil, and they have terrible test results because that doesn't get the omega-3s to the right place.
Mhm.
And you're producing these really dangerous breakdown products in the body. Balance oil reaches the part that ordinary fish oils don't reach. They get into the cell membranes, they switch off the inflammatory sequence, and at that point, the body's ability to heal and regenerate comes to the fore, and medical miracles happen.
I love it. Absolutely. Okay, I did have a question on this where people were asking, okay, well, in the regards to our balance oil, is there anything in regards to where we're storing it, how long it can be open, things that we have to be careful about, the hot or the cold, or any of the balance products, whether it's Ascent or Aqua X or any of that?
Well, ordinary fish oils are notoriously unstable and they have a short shelf life and they go rancid. It doesn't really matter very much. I mean, by storing them in the refrigerator, you'll extend the shelf life a little, but they still go off pretty quickly because they use the wrong antioxidants, which are not really chaperone compounds at all. They use D-ascorbyl succinate, which is a version of vitamin C. They use D-alpha tocopherol, and this is not the right. These are not the right antioxidants. That's not what works in nature. Um, and to me, it's a mystery why the fish oil companies use these products because really they know better, or they should know better. And I've spoken to the CEOs of some of the big fish oil companies, and I said, look, there's a problem here. Your products don't work, and they're actually harming people. And they said, well, we know that, but it's a good business, and it's a really good business.
What?
We're talking about billions of dollars. Okay, so you know what? I got onto my favorite hobby horse. Remind me, what was the question?
Okay, so we're looking at like the how long shelf life it has,
Oh, shelf life, shelf life, shelf
shelf
life.
life,
Okay.
or when it's
So
open.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
know
Well,
we put
it's
ours
not.
in the fridge. I learned the hard way, Dr. Paul, that you got to put it in the fridge.
Well, if it's traditional fish oil, yes. If you're using balance oil, it's not quite so critical because by using the right chaperone, you extend the shelf life considerably. Now, there's a TV program. I think it's called Eating History. Maybe some of you have seen it, and it consists largely of these two or rather eccentric self-publicists who make programs about eating chef food that is years and decades beyond its shelf life. And they talk about how it tastes, and I think they earn their money. I think they're eating a lot of terrible food. Um, and just by accident, I left a bunch of bottles of balanced oil um, in a bag on a shelf out in the open in a place where I had been staying in central France. And the windows aren't double glazed. There's no central heating. And I left it there for 4 years. I'd forgotten all about it. There were other things in the bag too, which were more personally interesting, including a kilt which which I'm allowed to wear because I'm partly Scottish. I'm partly everything. Um, so I
You're
came back 4 years later, and I've just seen this program about people eating out of date food, and I thought, I wonder if this is still drinkable because it had been through hot and cold cycles 4 different years. And I opened one bottle and took a sniff very cautiously. And if you've ever eaten or drunk rancid fish oil, you won't forget that experience. It's bad. It's really bad. And I didn't smell any rancidity. And I very gingerly, I took a couple of drops of it, and it tasted okay. And I thought, wow, this doesn't seem to have gone off at all. And I took a slug of it, and I still could not detect any rancidity whatsoever. So I drank that bottle, and then the next one, and then retested myself. And my blood readings were still in the same place they were when I started. So by putting the natural chaperones back into the oil, I'm no longer sure what the shelf life really is. We can take a cue from what happens in the ocean. The fish don't make these fish oils. It's the algae, the marine algae at the bottom of the marine food systems that produce the omega-3s, and they also produce the polyphenols that keep them sweet. Now, consider how those omega-3s transit through the food webs. They travel through four, five, six trophic levels before they reach the apex predator. So they go through the gut and then the tissues of the krill, the gut and the tissues of pelagic fish, the larger fish, the marine mammals, and then maybe the apex predator. And that's a journey that can take 12 months or more. Maybe it could be 2, 3 years for all we know, maybe even longer. And yet the omega-3s arrive at their endpoint intact. By combining them with the right chaperones, these polyphenols, which cling very tightly to the omega-3s and afford them a degree of antioxidant protection that no other antioxidant can do, the shelf life just stretches out for years. Now, I'm not recommending to anyone that you leave your bottle of fish oil open on the counter in the warm and just let it go. I mean, I think that would be irresponsible. I don't think I could guarantee that in 6 months' time that oil would still be sweet. I recommend that you use the bottles promptly. You keep stored in the cold. That's, I think, just generally a conservative attitude to take. But in reality, I do think, from my experience, the oil seems to be considerably more robust than that, and unlike any other fish oil.
Well, then that
Could I,
answers that question.
could I just say, Carla, that
Yeah.
some doctors have said, well, this isn't fish oil, it's snake oil. And to that, I have a very simple response. Snake oil is traditionally used in the Far East as an anti-inflammatory. Now, not just any snake, they use sea snake oil. Now, gathering sea snakes is a hazardous occupation because those are venomous critters, but they know how to do it. You take the snake and then you put it through a mangle, you squeeze out the oil, and it's put into storage, and it is a very powerful anti-inflammatory compound because those sea snakes are in the marine food webs. They contain the omega-3s and the polyphenols, which is what we have in balance oil. What then happened was, the hucksters in the United States, looking to make a quick buck, started squeezing oil out of rattlesnakes and copperheads and all those kinds of snakes, which contain no omega-3s or polyphenols whatsoever. And snake oil salesman became a pejorative term because clearly that junk doesn't work. But the original sea snake oil does. What we're selling effectively is the real deal, real snake oil, except it's fish oil.
Dr. Paul, that was a good analogy. It's funny. I don't think I'm going to use it because I don't want to get people started thinking that we got snake oil. But yes, okay, absolutely love that.
I don't know. I'm seeing a rebranding opportunity here.
Let's grab that opportunity. Why not? Why not? Okay, well, we've got balance oil. We know that it is working. We can see it with the test. And anybody who is in doubt about anything, just take the test and find.
For you.
Okay. Is balance oil okay for those with AFib?
Is balance oil okay for when?
Those with AFib, afibrillation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, eating oily fish does not create AFib or make it worse. AFib is caused by poorly formulated fish oils, which do not contain polyphenols and therefore oxidize in the body to form these very toxic breakdown products, which are arrhythmogenic. They cause arrhythmia. Balance oil doesn't do that.
So a lot of people might answer their own questions. If they can eat fish, they would be able to take it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And if you
Um,
have a fish allergy and can't eat fish, you can still take balance oil because the allergy to fish is to fish protein. There's no protein in balance oil.
Good to know. Okay, when is it best to take balance oil or the products? Do we take them all together? Of the day, when is it best and why?
Okay, as regard to timing, take extent with meals because when you eat, as soon as you smell or taste food, and the act of chewing itself wakes up the intestine, makes it better able to absorb micronutrients. When it comes to xenobiotic, it doesn't really matter what time you take it. You don't digest it anyway. It passes through the small intestine, and it's the bacteria in your gut that are going to be utilizing it. When it comes to balance oil, there is a timing issue. Do not take it uh, too close to a period of intense physical activity. So, if you're going to go for a run in the morning, take your balance oil at night. If you're going to go to the gym in the evening, take your balance oil in the morning. And the reason for that is if you take balance oil and it's floating around in the blood, hasn't yet been incorporated in your tissues, and you then get involved in intense exercise, your body will say, here's some lipids, I can burn them for energy. And you'll burn them using this fuel rather than integrating them as structural components